All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Patrick Hansen. I'm the Senior Director for EU Strategy and Policy at Circle. For those who don't know Circle, Circle is a global financial technology company, a public company since last June, and we're trying to build a global full-stack internet financial platform. So beginning from our digital asset issuance, EthCC, EURC, probably most of you folks know Circle from that angle, to the application layer, building CPN, Circle Payments Network, StableFX and other products on top of these digital assets, to the underlying settlement infrastructure. So that's what we're trying to do at Circle. I'm primarily, taking care of our European regulatory setup and business over here, and that's what I also want to focus on in today's, next 15 minutes presentation. I want to try and answer the question, can the euro compete on chain? And it's actually quite a continuation of my previous presentations at EthCC at 2024 and at 2023, where I looked at the growth of nascent euro stablecoins and then ultimately MiCA as a catalyst for the European crypto landscape. And now 2 years later, we can kind of take stock of both my predictions that I made 2 or 3 years ago and also where the market is today. All right, let's dive in. Can the euro compete on chain? What's the context of this question? Like, what's the baseline? And I think that's something that most of you are already aware of. The euro is a global powerhouse in traditional finance. It averages roughly 20% across verticals when it comes to foreign exchange reserves, when it comes to international SWIFT payments or international deposits. So it's really by far the largest fiat currency behind the US dollar. It's way, way bigger than any other non-US dollar currency in traditional financial markets. And then you contrast that with the crypto markets, right? That's the second-hand side here, and I think I kept it deliberately small because there's just no red color to find on that chart, right? In crypto markets, the stablecoin markets by now are 300 billion strong, and there's only 0.0% of that is euro denominated. So global powerhouse, very relevant in TradFi, but almost insignificant at this stage in crypto. And so the question that we're trying to answer, and I think most of you are wondering about, is will that change, right? And spoiler alert, in the next 15 minutes, what I would like to cover is why I believe that the euro can compete on chain, why I think that MiCA, that entered into application 1.5 years ago for stablecoins, was a catalyst, will be a catalyst and really a turning point, and that what the remaining barriers are going forward. And I listed them here. I think it starts and ends really with liquidity and distribution. For real estate, people tend to say, location, location, location. I always say for stablecoins, it's really liquidity, liquidity, liquidity. And coming back to the first point why I think MiCA is the catalyst, I want to give you guys an overview of where we are today. MiCA entered into application at the end of June 2024 for stablecoins that are regulated as e-money tokens, EMTs under MiCA, so a single fiat-pegged stablecoin. And by now, so almost 2 years later, what we have is a landscape of roughly 20 licensed e-money token issuers across Europe that issue a whole bunch of stablecoins, but most of them, so roughly 17 of them, are actually euro denominated. You can see some of the issuers here. There's a wide variety of issuers. Banks are among them, right here in France, Société Générale or Oddo. In Belgium, Banking Circle. Non-bank e-money institutions are among those issuers, like we are, Circle, regulated as an electronic money institution in France, or Monerium and others. I know there are many present here at EthCC. Then there are payments-focused enterprises here. So there's a wide array of issuers, and there's a wide array of issuance models. So under MiCA, just one example, Oddo, for example, that French bank, they're issuing their EMT, but they're not backing it with a segregated reserve. They're really backing it with their entire balance sheet. That's something that's possible under MiCA, which is not possible, just as one example, under Genius in the upcoming US rules. And so what I want you to take away from this slide is really two things. One is it's not the lack of options and offerings, right? By now we have almost 20 euro stablecoins that are out there, different issuers, different models. We can't really complain about the lack of options. There are enough out there. And then the second takeaway is really the institutionalization of the market. And I think that's where people tend to agree the future growth will come from. S&P Global Ratings projects, in their upper bound scenario that the euro stablecoin market will reach 1.1 trillion in a couple of years. The baseline scenario is closer to 500 billion, but even that would be multiple thousand X from where we are today. And they're all citing MiCA as the key catalyst for that. So to some extent, MiCA is working as intended. And when I was here 2 years ago, I actually shared a few, predictions. I think it's safe to say we're at least trending towards, these predictions coming into place. I said euro stablecoins will 5x. We're probably close to that. From 250 million, I think we're just under 1 billion in euro stablecoins. A lot of consolidation, I predicted. And that's what we're seeing, right? Both international players came to Europe, bought some e-money institutions like Paxos did with Membrane in Finland, but also French players acquired others, right? Schumann bought here in EMI and launched their stablecoin. Same for the crypto asset service provider market where Robinhood bought Bitstamp and others. If you look at the market today and how many registered players there were 2 years ago, it has consolidated by a ton. And the institutionalization, I think, is undeniable with more and more banks entering the space. There's even a bank consortium on the horizon, 12 banks that will launch a euro stablecoin. And interestingly enough, they're not launching a tokenized deposit, which they could do as a bank, right? But they're really launching that e-money token, which I think is a strong signal. And then the last point, which I believe will be a huge catalyst for growth in the future, is really the tokenization of traditional capital markets. That is something that is nascent today, but already live. You have what is called DLT pilot regimes across Europe. Here in France, there's a startup called Lise, great founder, great guy. In Germany, there's 21X as one example, where folks already today can trade tokenized money market funds and other securities with stablecoins. And those volumes are obviously still nascent, still relatively low, but there's a very, very strong push by the entire capital markets industry to get there. And so with MiCA as the catalyst, the question is what does success look like for euro stablecoins? And we at EthCC, we're really doubling down on EURC, our euro-denominated product, have been doing that. I'm personally very focused on that. And we have seen over the last 1.5 years very promising growth for our stablecoin EURC or EURC. So when we announced here in France, actually in Paris on the 1st of July 2024, that we would issue it now from our French e-money institution, 100% issued and reserved here in France, compliant with the rules, we were at 35 million of market cap. We grew over the last 1.5, 2 years to over 360 roughly today. So that's an over 10x growth. We captured more than 50% of the euro stablecoin market share. And EURC today is really the only euro stablecoin that is among the top 25 or top 50 stablecoins by market cap. So it's at least at this stage, is the undeniable leader when it comes to euro stablecoins. And what we're trying to do is to build upon that and to double down on that across different verticals. So where we see euro stablecoins being used today might be very different where stablecoins will be used in the future. Right? Today what we're building upon, and there's a ton of my colleagues that are here today at EthCC, is we're really focusing on the baseline. And the baseline is liquidity and distribution in crypto markets. And if you look at the standard exchanges here in Europe today, both the international ones and the European ones, all of them almost at this point list and trade EURC. So the Coinbases of the world, the Krakens, the Bitstamps, Bitpandas, Bitbavos, and others. And that has worked, that has been ongoing for over 2 years. And by now, EURC is by far the most widely listed and distributed euro stablecoins among those. And an interesting use cases for EURC within those platforms is the usage as collateral and margin, for example, for futures, right? This is something where dollar stablecoins have been super strong in the past and where we foresee strong growth. So if you want to try it out, for example, on Kraken, you can already use EURC as a fiat cash equivalent collateral and margin asset for these trades, which is great. And then probably the most interesting part for the audience at EthCC is really DeFi. So there's a ton of DEX protocols that have listed EURC pairs, Uniswap, Aerodrome, and others, and lending borrowing protocols. And this is really where I personally think that will be the highest, growth lever over the next 12 to 18 months. Because what you see in these pools, you can check them out, it's on Camino, for example, on Aave, on Morpho, is that the lending rates that you get for EURC are already higher than the standard euro base interest rate that you would get from the ECB or that you would get from your neo broker or banking app, right? And so this is something that, as, who knows, interest rates further decline, that might be a strong incentive for example, neobanks, brokers, fintechs in Europe to provide that pathway to their customers to tap into that DeFi native field. So I think DeFi, highly encourage everyone to check that out. I think this is where we'll see a ton of growth over the next 12 months. And this is, by the way, these are all things that are already being built upon today, that are being used, that are live. Feel free to check them out. And then the other two verticals that are listed here, and obviously there are many others, but that we're particularly excited about, are payments and capital markets. When it comes to payments, I think it's safe to say that we're here in Europe. When it comes to cross-border treasury management or supplier payments, that will natively be done with locally denominated currencies, right? And so the same way that a French or German corporation will use, dollars and euros and pounds for different supplier payments, they will do the same when it comes to on-chain corporate treasury. And so this is something where we're seeing a lot of demand, including by some of the largest corporations here in Europe. We're integrating EURC into our Circle Payments network, where businesses can provide cross-border payments powered by stablecoins. We're integrating into StableFX, where businesses can get quotes for essentially on-chain FX, which are usually much more competitive than traditional FX rates. And then, last but not least, we're also working with some of the largest payment service providers in the world to provide EURC-powered rails. One example, Visa has integrated EURC as the first euro stablecoin to power, for example, settlement between Visa financial institutions, so they're participating banks. And that's something that, as crypto grows out of the pure crypto play and integrates further with traditional finance and traditional payments, that's where we see a lot of euro-denominated stablecoin growth to come from. And then the third bullet point, that's probably something that is still a little bit further away, but something for the next couple of years for sure, are really the tokenization of capital markets. There's a strong push in the European Union now with what is called the Markets Integration Package to build on-chain capital markets. The EU DLT pilot regimes that I mentioned are the first test cases for that, but ultimately the entire capital markets at some point will move on-chain to benefit from the added values that blockchain tokenization offers here, which is, as you all know, 24/7 settlement, liquidity, access, etc. And this is also, by the way, capital markets where S&P in their earlier projection, which is incredibly bullish, they see the highest growth in 2030 coming from, which is, capital markets. So these are where we currently see EURC being, requested, demanded. We have seen strong growth of EURC's share over the last couple of months, and we are really doubling down on all of these, because ultimately what we think and what we've seen for dollars is that you need to build the foundation first, right? The liquidity, the distribution, so the first point, in order for the other verticals to pick up the same assets. Personally, I don't think you can build euro stablecoins the other way around. I don't think you can start from the 0.3 and move downwards to 1. I think you have to start from the bottom-up demand and liquidity where users are today. And so when it comes to the question of whether euro stablecoins can compete on chain, I think there's both tailwinds and constraints. Tailwinds, I mentioned some of these, MiCA, institutional adoption, tokenization. There's others, right? AI and agentic payments. As those come into play, I think everyone expects those AI agentic payments in the euro area to be euro denominated. And others, institutionalization, regionalization of DeFi. Once people start borrowing from DeFi to pay whatever their car loans or their mortgage payments or whatever, it will have to be in euros, right? And that's, I think, a development that everyone foresees happening. Strong euro also another driver. I don't know how many here got burned over the last 24 months lending in non-euro currencies, in DeFi is one example. And then the constraints, it's really what I mentioned, liquidity, liquidity, liquidity. That's the tough road ahead that needs to be built. We're quite, we're quite pumped by recent EURC growth in trading volumes across these exchanges. And then additionally, there's a few regulatory hurdles I think we need to overcome. I don't want you to bore you with those. But businesses that want to provide stablecoin services in the EU today, for example, custody transfers, they will need 2 different licenses, MiCA and PSD. And that's a duplication, I think, that needs to be solved going forward for the EU because it hampers euro stablecoin growth. Political support is a big one, right? In the past, ECB and others really pointed towards the euro CBDC from the ECB being the solution for everything. That's slowly but surely changing towards a messaging and a narrative where these different types of assets coexist. And that's very important for the overall business climate in the space, right? And so ultimately, when it comes to the question, can euro stablecoins compete on chain? My personal takeaway, and it has been the same over the last 1 or 2 years, is it will be able to compete on chain. It will not be a hockey stick overnight, growth development over, a couple of weeks or months, but it will be constant, steady growth over the next 24, 3, 4, 5 years as these markets integrate further with traditional finance. And so what we do at Circle is we build on recent growth for EURC, and we're really trying to double down on the things that have worked in the past, right? We want to make EURC the most liquid and widely distributed euro stablecoin that is competitive with some of the largest dollar stablecoins out there. Obviously, we built all of that on a compliant infrastructure. We're integrating that into our own apps and settlement infrastructures, so CPN I mentioned, StableFX and others. And we're quite hopeful that based on the numbers we're seeing on chain, so you see here, a year ago we had roughly 30K holders of EURC, now we're almost at 200K. That slowly but surely we're seeing those liquidity and network effects for EURC coming into play. And obviously we're quite, pumped about what's ahead for the euro. We're doubling down on EURC. We want to make it, the default euro on-chain. And I invite everyone, be it retail folks here that want to just try it out and trade or lend it in DeFi, or projects developers out there that are as pumped as I am about the future of the euro on-chain to just integrate it. Feel free to reach out to me. There's a number of colleagues here out there that could help you with those use cases. And so I will leave you with saying, let's make the euro win on chain as well. And with that, I can open for a few questions. Thank you.
Thanks. You said it's interesting that Quivalis, this consortium, is going for the EMT and not the balance sheet backed one. Why is this interesting? Why is it good?
So 2 different points here. First of all, they're going for an e-money token and not a tokenized deposit. And then the second point is they're going for a fully backed segregated e-money token and not a balance sheet backed one, right? And I think the reason why even the banks tend to do e-money tokens and not tokenized deposits is because they're inherently different legal assets. So a deposit is a constant, ongoing relationship that you have legally and contractually with a bank. So you cannot just use it as a bearer asset and send it out. And that is, in my opinion, the inherent value proposition of an e-money token, which is a bearer asset, right? I can hold it in my non-custodial wallet and send it to all of you guys without any of you having the need to be contractual customers of that bank. And so by default, I think that these deposits asset will have a much more constrained perimeter because they are always permissioned in that network of contractual clients of the bank. I think that's the most important point. There's a few others, but that's the key one, I think.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I have a question regarding EURC status in Aave, because a few months ago, it was the LTV was actually 0. It became 0 basically overnight for EURC. the EURC token, which actually affected me personally because I was using EURC. So are you guys working with Aave to get the LTV back to where it was, or what happened, and will this be corrected? Because Aave obviously the biggest lending market in DeFi. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I'm personally not involved in that partnership. I know that our team is working on that. Aave is obviously a very big, important partner of ours. Ultimately, it's supply and demand, right, for these pools. What I can say is that we see a big future for euro-denominated lending and borrowing pools, and we want to make those as liquid and as attractive as possible. So TBD, happy to connect you also with some of the guys that work on these partnerships here directly. But indeed, I think liquidity in these DeFi lending and borrowing pools will only grow from now. That's what I personally think. I think I need to stop, unfortunately, but happy to connect behind the scenes. Thank you very much.
Do you have something?